Well, welcome everyone to Fresh from the Studio. We are honored to have Colleen Blackard and Renee Nunez present today. Originally scheduled with also Darcy Book, but unfortunately she's not going to be on this edition. We hope she'll be on the September or October one. So stay tuned for that. But today we're very thrilled to have Colleen and Renee with us. Um, each artist will present for 10 minutes, giving us a little taste of what they're working on now, and upcoming projects. At the end of both presentations, we'll have time for Q&A, comments, any reflections, and then we welcome anyone in the audience to share what they have coming up, and we'll talk about a few of the programs that Women in Their Work has. So let's start with Colleen.
All right, let's see, screen share. All right, come on, iPad, you can do this. Screen broadcast, okay. Okay, how's that? Can everyone see it?
Yeah, that looks great.
Oh, awesome. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Colleen Blackard and I'm originally from the DFW area, and then my family and we moved to Austin in 2000. And then for the first decade of my career, I've been a New York City artist. But since the pandemic, I've come back home to Texas, and I've been traveling to remote residencies like the one I'm currently at here in Germany. I'm also in the middle of getting my MFA in studio art at UT Austin for another year. And I primarily work in ballpoint drawing, like this detail shown here, painting, monotype, and now installation. So yeah, I wanted to start by talking about this residency I did in Ireland in 2019 that was life-changing. I went to Kilrelig Artist Retreat. It's in County Kerry, and it really showed me how important being in nature was for my work. So it was realizing it was time to start traveling and not just be in New York City. So here at the residency, I was really inspired by all the forces that work on the space, all the wild weather coming in from the Atlantic, and the rain and the sleet on the roof. So I created these, let's see, they are some Yupo paper paintings where I put acrylic on Yupo and let them sit out in the rain. And they created these really interesting rain imprints of Ireland that I brought back with me. And I got a lot from this experiment. I really respond to the tonality that I could get out of this and the color choice. So next I want to share that about a year later, in December 2020, when I was isolated due to the pandemic, I was really thinking about that residency again. And the other thing about Kilrelig is it was this idea of isolation, these Kilrelig monks who had come over from Skellig Michael and created this monastery nearby the residency. So there were these medieval ruins there that we could go explore. And thought about returning to them at night and what that would look like. This is also the Moonstones, which was a site above the hill of the residency, and thinking about those sites as well. But I was really interested in thinking, like, if I had been around at that time period, like what colors would I have had access to? So I spent a long time researching medieval pigments and thinking about maybe they would use woad or azurite or malachite and graphite and charcoal and lamp oil. So I got really into that and used the same colors to create these prints. And right now, I'm excited to say they're currently on display nearby where I am now at Monskirch Gallery. I'm totally mispronouncing that, in Salzwedel, Germany. And this is actually a repurposed medieval monastery in this medieval town. So there's like nothing better than showing these monotypes in this space. It was just the perfect combination. So I'm really grateful to Hans and Catherine of the Tillier House Filmsin for this opportunity. And they'll be up through September. So, like I mentioned, travel became important in experiencing these different regions. In 2021 fall, I traveled to two residencies out west in Wyoming and then in Oregon. So here in Wyoming, I spent a lot of time in the foothills of the Bighorns, and I just was really blown away by the scale of things. Like being from central Texas, like we've got the hill country, but here all the hills
Hey, Colleen, I think we've lost your sound.
Colleen, can you type in the chat or to see if your Zoom is maybe frozen or something? I guess, let's see, maybe we'll give Colleen some time, and then Renee, do you think maybe you'd be able to step in if there's a technical difficulty while we get that sorted out?
Yeah, looks like somebody else is not having audio either.
Yeah. Might be
Do we
on.
think that's just Colleen, or is this a different issue?
I think it's just Colleen.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna stop her share.
Okay. Okay. Tell me when you're ready.
I think we're ready.
Okay. There we go. Can everybody hear me?
Mhm.
Yep.
Thank you so much for inviting me to share what I'm working on these days, and to everyone who's joining us today. I live in Lago Vista, and I'm a native Texan. I work primarily in painting, installation art, drawing, and 3D construction. Plants and animals and other creatures are the main focus of my work, usually appearing as a biomorphic landscape, though I do have a micro focus at times. I use drawings to practice mark making, landscape compositions, and textures and atmosphere. It allows me to mull ideas over while getting things on the page and helps me let go of conscious decision making. These drawings are all from the last 6 months.
Renee, I think your presentation isn't showing up for everyone.
Huh. Is Mercury in retrograde?
I think so.
I don't know. I can you see it?
We
I
see
couldn't.
you.
Yeah.
You can see me, but not the presentation.
Mhm.
Now we just see an L.
Odd. Okay, I'll try again.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's looking promising.
Do I need to back up?
Nice.
Yes. Okay, now we can see it.
And we still have audio.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So these, I don't need to back up my text. Did everybody heard what I was saying about the drawings?
Mhm.
Yes.
These drawings are, a lot of them are from a project I was working on with Austin Classical Guitar. I didn't use all of them, but This one here in the top left corner was the one they used for their print publication. This one is probably going to end up being a landscape sometimes. Sometimes they do. Sometimes it's all about atmosphere. This piece is a big change in direction from my earlier work, and that's why I included it in here. It's from the Desert Door residency, which is in 2021. I'm curious about frame and edge, as I'm really curious about how a viewer enters the work. I typically use these organic edges to allow more possibilities for entry. And for this painting, I removed the interior cut work that was in my previous works. So in the past, there would be more intricacy, more intricate cuts inside of the painting, not just the edges. This is the first artwork in 10 years that I made with a background and softness, because I wanted to start bringing in more atmosphere, because I didn't have a background for 10 years, basically. I only had 3 months to complete this piece, and I was excited about this because I had a feeling it would make the work more immediate and direct. There was no time to deliberate on best decisions. I had to just be right there in the moment. This piece and the next are explorations in an intuitive process, and I think that made the anthropomorphism subtler in these two pieces. I also experimented with the white panel as a background because it's very reflective. I don't know if you can see it a little bit, but the backs of the paintings are painted, so they're reflecting color on the white. I've always loved working with cardboard and paper and fabric, and I knew cardboard would be a good possibility for this piece. I like materials that I can shape with a minimum of tools. I began working in cardboard again recently, laminating layers of it together to make a support. I can now remove nails from the installation process, which has historically been how I install the works, but it can be really time consuming and tricky. I had to work intuitively to make a tiny landscape more of a living thing. I didn't use much planning in the painting because that sometimes leads me away from a genuine quality. The plants on the rock changed so many times before settling into these succulents. There's like a living rock and I think that's a Graptopetalum. And these tiny orchids. This orchid species doesn't even look like a flower. You might not know that that's a flower because it looks almost like a design. So I find that really interesting. I added to the support here by covering the laminated cardboard with muslin. And like the last slide, I've been wanting to work more in 3D lately. So do this leading in a new direction. To shift back to the focus on shape from my habitat body work. And I've used a lot of medium and thin layers to give more depth to the light, because that can be a little bit difficult with acrylic. Bleeding hearts have a sensual form that's almost anthropomorphic looking, and this rich pinky red that I've tried to reproduce. These are brand new works. I just started working on these. So I think the one in the middle, the blue one, is like, has a few days in it, but the rest of them are all brand new. I wanted to dramatically change the energy of this room, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, only that I was going to layer some colors and textures. I had this big house painter's brush and these 4 walls, which lent themselves to making really large motion. It slowly became grass, and the idea for a wild space evolved. At first intuitively, and then I began some light planning. it started to remind me of the overgrown spaces that used to exist. There were a lot of dreamy wild spaces and alleys and other liminal urban areas that always attracted me. These spaces are an envelope of green, secrecy, and dreams. So the grass kept getting taller and taller because it needs to engulf the viewer in a sort of cocoon. The idea of dreams led me to use poppies. Mexican poppies are a sweet, creamy yellow color. And the native rose, Rosa Carolina, and milkweed vine are plants that I associate with wild spaces, even if they're not particularly urban. You can walk past a milkweed vine and not even see it because they're so inconspicuous. If you look closely, you can see they have a curious pentagonal stigma and stamen combination with this pearlescent sheen in the center and these fleshy petals. I just finished this piece. Obviously, the room still needs some more construction. Pineapple Spider is one of those long-term paintings that I go to and wait for it to talk to me. I've been working on it for close to 2 years. It's got a lot of challenging components. This format of landscape is still new to me. The edges, the colors, and the focal points are really difficult to coax into agreement, partly because I detailed early in the process. I'm definitely going to have to focus more on glazing and layering to soften the transitions. This is a scale view, because sometimes it can be hard to visualize how big these are. This one's 5, I think, what's that? Yeah, 5 by 7, 5 feet by 7 feet. This piece is a narrative and has specific characters. There are always suggestions of that in my earlier work, but I've become more interested in their specific stories. This grasshopper is a main character. I wrote a creation story a few years ago for 2 of the characters in this painting, and there's a tiny vignette unfolding here. You can see this is the spider that where it gets its name. I've already titled it. I'm not even finished. And these are bee balms down here. I've been mulling over a new type of substrate for a while, and I'm going to be experimenting with that for this piece. I want it to have the tapestry-like feel, but without the clunky support system. It's one of the key components of my work is that I like for it to kind of dissolve into the whatever wall it's going to be displayed on. The frame kind of, I feel too boxed in by the frame. So if I do it like a tapestry, it's going to have the edges dissolve. So that's going to be a bit tricky. Because I constantly change the scale and things like texture and complexity. I sometimes think I might settle somewhere, but really I think that regular change is just natural for me. As soon as I get my artist statement just right, I find myself in a new direction. It's like an omen now. I know when I need to move on. The landscape is a thing that has always remained in some form or another, and always the plants. That's it for me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Renee.
And I'm just gonna type her information in the chat as well if y'all would like to follow up and see what Renee is working on after this. And then now I think it would be good to give Colleen.
Hello. I'm back. Let's see if it works this time.
Well, your
right.
sound is working, so that's definitely a good
Okay,
sign.
good. Oh, good. All right. Share screen. Start broadcast. Okay. There. Okay, so I heard that it cut out when I was talking about the Texas landscape.
Yes.
Ooh. All right. Oh, and I was gonna hide myself view. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was just thinking a lot about how, in Texas Hill Country, we have all these crazy hills, but they're covered with cedar trees. So you don't really see the geography as clearly, the rocks and everything. But here it was like grassland. So it felt kind of like an organic shape or like fleshy form at this time of year with all the grass being so, let's see, the ground was pink and then there was like yellow grass. And it was just kind of like I was trying to understand that geography. So thinking about, Enchanted Rock, how when you get to the top, you think you're at the top, but it keeps going. It had that feeling to it where I'd walk over the top of a hill and think there was nothing there and then startle a pronghorn or any other kind of animal like deer that were wandering around. So I wanted to understand that a bit more and just this massive scale of the West. And so I created this 15-foot drawing in graphite and chalk to really understand that scale by putting myself into the space and looking around at it from a 1-to-1 scale. And then after this drawing, I did monotypes of my experiences there. So we went up to Medicine Wheel up in the Bighorns nearby. And this was thinking about that experience and my response to it and imagining returning to it at night once again. So the next series of work was actually from last fall at UT. So like I mentioned, I'm getting my MFA there, and this was from the first semester, a lot of experimenting, thinking about how to capture the experience of a place and combine it with my inner world, my response to it. And so for this project, I was just using completely memory. So right there on the wall, there's these standing stones, and I was trying to remember what they look like and using the scale of my body to create these marks as I remembered experiencing them. So this whole space was like that. Some other cool parts of it were this floor, which was a scan that I did of a ballpoint drawing that was 12 by 12 inches. And then I scanned it up to, I guess it's 19 by 19 feet and wallpapered it to a surface on the floor. It was cool to see those marks scale up. Another fun moment was I did a lot of drawings of my time over there, and this was the Atracua stone alignment across the bay. And I did a silk screen of my ballpoint drawing, and then I put it on the wall, and it had this kind of misty feeling responding with the texture of the wall. And it's very small, so when you navigate in the space, you might miss it, but then you come across this little misty, detailed moment hidden. And another fun moment for this installation was this 3-headed figure that I created using my own silhouette. And I put her here, and like she's coming out of the hill from this space on the other side of the veil. And one really fun moment was during Open Studios this spring, somebody left a flower in the very center of the space. And I was behind the curtain at the moment. I was talking to somebody. There was nobody in the front space. And then all of a sudden I pull the curtain aside and I look and there's a flower there. So I really love that somebody got into the spirit of this kind of subconscious other world that I was wanting to create and added to that experience. That made it for me. So then this past spring, I decided to think about this wall drawing, experiential drawings idea, but then to create my own walls for it. So here I used this spiral shape, and I used kind of counterclockwise spiral, thinking about a snail shell, so that when you enter it, you're surrounded by the drawing. And this particular piece, Shelter the Storm, was about embodying a lightning strike and what it would mean if you were the light source. And you were looking around at all the shadows that you were emanating. Maybe it hit a tree, maybe there's a figure there. Like you're casting these shadows that I wanted the experience to be kind of strange and a little unnerving and odd, but also peaceful, kind of a calm storm. And here there was some fun little details that happened, like this snail shell that you had to search to find in the space. Once again, that really micro scale in this macro space. And I put these silk screens of my drawings on the outside as well. These little imprints of the snail in the garden hiding from the rain. So right now I'm currently at Atelier House Homes and Artist Residency in Germany. And here's a picture of the courtyard of the farmhouse residency space. And all of it's been converted to studio spaces. Like here's my space on the right. And I've been doing a lot of monotypes while I'm here, responding to my recent travels through Scandinavia. So here I was finding inspiration on Bornholm in Denmark in midsummer. I found this stone, Hellighagen. It was in Danish, and approaching it, I started to think about how I would respond to that with my monotypes, and I did some sketching on site. So the monotypes I've been creating here are based on these experiences of like going through Scandinavia, like the Norway and fjords and things like that, fjords. And so this was a Viking graveyard that we happened upon, and I imagine returning to that at midnight, and you have these kind of mounds there that were the burial mounds. And he was more responding to the textures of that hike in this valley surrounded by mountains in Norway. And this was responding to a hike up into the fjords, searching for waterfalls. And I was really struck by, like, on this hike, how all of the stones really seemed to have character to them. Like, you really felt like they could come alive like a troll or something. Like they had this personality, and it was really interesting to see. Also during this series, I'm thinking about like those trolls, like the folklore of the region, Norse mythology as well, all these things that I've been reading during my travels and my time here to reflect on the landscape and to access it in a different way. So I wanted to see how much of that I want to incorporate into this work. So on the right, I was experimenting with kind of illustrative cutouts and this figure emerging on the side of the fjord there. And when you're walking through that scale, it makes sense that they would have ideas about giants there, because nothing smaller than that could inhabit these vast spaces that you're like these fjords that you're walking through. It's just amazing. So I'm still thinking about that and how to respond to it. And here's a couple more from that series. And also while I'm here, I've been biking to these Neolithic, megalithic tombs that are nearby and doing sketches of them and drawings, and we'll see how I respond to them in the future. So yeah, that's the second half of my talk. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Colleen.
Yeah. Okay, how do I exit? And, oh, that's not it. Oh, iPads. Okay. Did it stop?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Now we're gonna open up the floor for questions from the audience. Feel free to chime in, or if y'all want to type them into the chat, I'm also happy to read them out loud too. But yeah, thank you both for those great presentations. And as Randy has said, amidst the technical difficulties getting through it. Okay.
Makes it real.
Yep.
Very amazing.
I'd like to ask a question. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a question for Renee. When you were talking about building up the layers of, I think it was laminated cardboard, so that you could end up removing nails from the hanging process, I'm curious to know, because I saw like an attachment on the back of one, and I saw them like what looked like the little magnets on the front of some, but how are you actually then attaching it to the wall if you don't have a nail to have the magnet stick to? Or I'm just, yeah, really curious about that.
Well, I haven't done it yet. This
Oh.
is all engineering that's happening in my head. But my idea was, because I'm inspired a lot by theater scenery, I was thinking I would use scrim fabric and adhere it to the back. And then somehow, because I don't really want to have a rod, I might have to end up going that way. But I could just attach it through the scrim fabric to the wall, and that way it's I don't have to put holes directly through the canvas, which, I mean, aesthetically it's fine, but I think that a lot of people were reading they were reading into the meaning into it that wasn't there. I'm not I mean, it's fine, but you know, I didn't want that kind of specimen type meaning in there.
Yeah, no, I can see how that would interfere with the image if you're seeing like what looks like a pin through the insect or something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll be curious to see how that develops.
Thank you. That's my hope.
Yeah, that's a great question, Alicia. And I actually have a question for both of the artists. I thought it was pretty interesting how y'all were both dealing with natural landscapes, but at such different scales. Renee, yours is like very on a micro level, while Colleen, yours is a little bit zoomed out on a macro level. So I was wondering how that relates to y'all's own experience of the landscape. And Renee used an interesting phrase, being media direct, and how these different scales sort of change the narratives. So basically how that relates to y'all's own personal experience within your separate environments, if that makes sense.
I didn't hear a part of what you said. Media direct, is that what I
Yeah,
heard?
that's just a phrase that you used when I was talking about your process, which might not maybe kind of relate to the larger question of how you're sort of representing these scenes, but at such different scales.
Okay, I think I understand. I'm asking the questions now. Sorry, do you want to go, Colleen, or do you want to talk?
Yeah, I could talk a little about that. That's a great question. Yeah, I think, let's see, I'm thinking about my relation to the space, like my physical experience of it, but then kind of, yeah, capturing the space more than the objects in the space. So that's kind of where it comes from, just the atmosphere and the feelings I get from it. And yeah, how I respond to it in a tactile, physical way. So that one-to-one scale is really interesting for that. To make something life size, it like brings it into this space, and then how do you respond to that when it's out of the landscape in Ireland and suddenly in the studio in Texas?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. We're kind of opposite. Like, you're making vast things smaller, and I'm having to explode micro things. Sort of. I mean, I don't know if that's what your intention is, but
Yeah.
it's just the necessity of a gallery space is only 10-foot high walls, so you can't encapsulate that. But for me, it's always the worm's eye view. I'm like, the idea of being cocooned by nature and I sometimes think that thing that people are missing is that need to be dwarfed. It's the thing that we've eliminated in our lives, is being, because we dominate everything, we have eliminated that feeling of being small and belonging and place, like real place, not the place ideas that we've constructed. So making those things bigger, I feel, makes them, it's easier for me to connect that way with the micro. Having them, I sometimes paint like that, like with my nose 2 inches for the painting.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I was like pretty tickled when you were talking about the grasshopper being a character, and then the spiders being like a character, and sort of these like insect narratives coming out in these like very lush landscapes. So thank you, Renee and Colleen, for both those great answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, does anybody else have any more questions for our two artists?
This is Lisa Rawlinson. I have a question for either of you. This came to mind while Renee was talking, but I think it applies generally. Just in that you kind of are in a lot of different paintings at the same time over an extended amount of time. And I'm wondering, like, what is that like for you in terms of moving from one painting to another, staying in the energy of that particular painting or group of paintings, and then going back and forth. Can you, but either of you speak to that?
Do you do that a lot, Colleen?
Going back and forth between the works?
Yeah.
Sometimes with the paintings, yeah. The monotypes are kind of one-off. So then I see if there's something I like and then I integrate it into the next. So it keeps building that way. Each one builds into the next one. But it's a little more linear.
I feel like it's dangerous. It's a dangerous practice. But I think that a lot of artists could relate to the idea that, like, if you're just working on one painting and there's this really hard hurdle you have to get over to when you're starting a new painting versus when if you have two or more. And I know, Lisa, hi Lisa, that you work on a lot of paintings at the same time too. And I think watercolors is more immediate, so you can maybe make those transitions faster. But yeah, it's like I had a painting that I started in 2015, and then a bunch of life changes happened and I wasn't able to work on it for literally 2 years. And I came back and was like, oh, I hate this painting. And so I had to really change it. And then it was like, it ended up being an unsuccessful painting, and it was 9 feet tall. So there's like, well, I guess I could reuse the canvas, but yeah, it's a risk. And but at the same time, I feel like it's worthwhile because I can, I'll have an experience in one painting, like, I forget how to paint all the time. So I'm always constantly relearning how to paint. And then if I'm working on multiple paintings at the same time, then I can take those, whatever it is that I've learned that day, and apply it to those other paintings if it's happening in a, short enough time frame. But the Habitat series was, it's cumulative. It was meant to be continually, it's really one piece, and it was meant to continue to keep growing and growing and growing. You don't know what I'm talking about because I didn't show slides of that, but it's older work. But yeah, so it's risky, but worthwhile. Thank you, Lisa.
It's so great to see your face and hear your voice, by the way. And I'm just now becoming familiar with Colleen, but I'm loving what I'm seeing there too. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
One day we'll meet in person.
yep.
Hey, Colleen, how have you benefited from all the different residencies you've participated in recently?
Yeah, gosh, I'm still figuring that out. I think it takes a while for them to settle in. But yeah, the Ireland one is just, that one has been life-changing. I think the biggest thing I got from that was really profound in that I didn't have to stay in New York anymore to feel like the work I was making was being seen. Like it felt like it got that remote space, got me back in touch with what matters to me about making art, regardless if anybody else sees it. So being in that profound space of like just learning what I care about with my work and responding to those landscapes, I'm still kind of mentally there. So each one is different. Like I see my friend Frank is here from Gentile residency, so making a lot of really great connections and friends, and that inspire me. And this day has really been a big part of those as well. Hey, Frank.
Yes, I was just commenting in the chat where the work from both Colleen and Renee, beyond the technical and the personal stories, the resulting artwork, each one of the pieces that you showed make me want to kind of crawl inside of them and take a take some time off and relax and maybe take a nap inside of them. Both of them are environmental to me. Beautiful, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. They're so lush and both really great works. Renee and Colleen, do y'all have any upcoming events or announcements that y'all would like to make regarding your practice?
Upcoming. I guess the show up right now at Salzvedel, that one's up till September 17th. And there may be some more in the works that I'll send out info about soon once they all come together.
I don't have anything upcoming right now. I've taken a teeny break from submitting, but that's going to happen really soon.
Nice. Well, everyone, feel free to follow both the artists. I've left their information in the chat. And as we wrap up, I just wanted to announce some upcoming events for women in their work. First off, we have our current show solo exhibition of Dan Jan's work, The Bow Whispers to the Arrow. And that's going to be up until September 7th with a talk about on Saturday, August 26th at 2 p.m. So definitely be on the lookout for that as more information comes out. We also have Red Dot coming up, and tickets will be available at the beginning of next month. And then lastly, today, if y'all are in town, we're going to be open later for our Third Thursday event. So you can get a chance to see Dan's show in the evening. But that's all from us. And I'd like to thank the artists again so much for showing us your studio and your work. It was really beautiful to see. And thank you to the audience who is here to listen and get through the technical difficulties. So
Thanks everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right. Have a good rest of y'all's day.
You
Thanks.
too. You all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.